Welcome to Hoda's Career Info. I'm your host, Hoda Kilani, career and academic coach at Right Career Fit. Coaching is all about storytelling, helping you to envision and tell your story your way. I put this series together to share stories of inspiring career people from across the globe. I hope their stories motivate you to envision your story, discover your road to success, or recast your career path. More importantly, I hope that you benefit from these career stories as much as I do. Our guest today is Associate Professor of Counseling and Coordinator of the Clinical Mental Health Program at Wake Forest University, Dr. Seth Hayden.
There is a gap between research and practice that is problematic. Career interventions can have mental health benefits. We need to provide the level of support based on the level of need. Career really is a global consideration. Work is almost a universal experience that we have as people.
Welcome back to Hoda's Career Info, your program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. Watch, listen, and learn. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me, Hoda Kilani, on social media for more career info. More importantly, make sure you have that very important career conversation with a career professional. Our guest, Dr. Seth Hayden, is an associate professor of counseling and coordinator of the Clinical Mental Health Program at Wake Forest University. Dr. Hayden's research focuses on the connection between career development and mental health. In addition, he examines the career and personal development needs of military service members, veterans, and their families. Dr. Hayden is a licensed clinical mental health counselor in North Carolina, a national certified counselor, a certified clinical mental health counselor, and an approved clinical supervisor. In addition, Dr. Hayden is a past president of the Military and Government Counseling Association and National Career Development Association, both divisions of the American Counseling Association. Dr. Hayden is co-author of Group Career Counseling Practices and Principles, as well as Career Development for Transitioning Veterans. He is the co-editor of Cognitive Information Processing, Career Theory, Research, and Practice. And finally, he is also the author of Integrating Career Development and Mental Health Counseling. Join me as Dr. Seth teaches us about cognitive information processing theory and the mental health benefits of career interventions. Welcome, Dr. Seth Hayden, to Hoda's Career Info. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Right away, Dr. Seth, I'm going to give you the question I ask every guest, which is, what is the term that best describes the work that you do, and how would you define it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think for me, so I'm a faculty member at a university and I work a lot with students. And one of the classes I teach is a research class. And I tell the students that if there was a hashtag for this class, it would be research informed practice, like hashtag research informed practice. And I really think that that embodies what I'm about in terms of being a professional. I think it's critically important for both research and those out in the field to interact with each other in a meaningful way. And so One of the things that I continually think about in terms of my scholarship, in terms of my preparation of counseling students, is how does this work in the world of career support, mental health support. And so I try to think about that and very intentionally. And so I really think that that describes my work. I in academia, but also still keep my hand in practice. I have a history of working in practice, and I think there is a gap between research and practice that is problematic. And we've talked about it kind of being a reality over a long period of time. And I think it's important we continually do something about that. And so I think who I talk with, how I write, how I shape my work needs to reflect this, trying to draw a connection between those areas.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the gap from your perspective? What is really the issue in there?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of what people in the world of practice and the world of scholarship are tasked with doing. And so I think people who are in academia and faculty members, they're writing papers, but they're writing papers for a particular audience, which is often other academics. And so you're going to have it shaped in a way that reflects that. It's going to be pretty explanatory, they're going to be pretty lengthy. And so there's that element of it. In terms of people who are out in practice, they're tasked with practicing and supporting those that they work with. And so the degree that they have the opportunity to really dive into a lengthy research paper and the degree that they feel comfortable with digesting that information, I think at times can create this gap. You have people who have a reward system in one area and people have a reward system in another area, and those things are not necessarily aligned. And so I think it's important that both parties respond to that. And so I think for me, from a scholarship standpoint, it's important that we write with that audience in mind. It's important that we put ourselves in front of practitioners. It's important that when I'm writing my implication section, I have one for practice, that I let people know how does this research inform practice. And then from the practice standpoint, I think it's important that there's interaction with the research and making time for it and prioritizing that. And I think it's not just individuals, but organizations have a responsibility in doing that as well. I think organizations that employ people to provide support have a responsibility to offer those opportunities to those that are working within the organization to enable them to continually develop their understanding, their skills, and having access to research, which then again informs practice. So I think those are some thoughts around how we can deal with that gap.
I appreciate your willingness to engage in this discussion. I know we can't solve it in this podcast, but
Sure.
it's definitely something that we need to be discussing further.
For me, when I look at a situation that people continually say needs to be dealt with, the question I have is, let's start to deal with it. Like it's almost as if we've talked about it as if this like intractable concern that we can't rectify. And I guess I just don't align with that. I think it takes effort, it takes commitment. I think it takes people such as yourself to have these kinds of discussions, and you're trying to invite this conversation. And I think that's how we start to move towards solving this concern of that gap. Because it's since I've been started my work, I've heard people talk about it, gap between research and practice, gap between research and practice. And I just feel like, okay, let's each of us commit to doing something about that. And so I appreciate your commitment, and I hope that others will see the value in trying to address this discrepancy between those two worlds.
I love this. And I hope through this conversation, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And we can build on from other people who watch and come say, I want to join you guys. Let's see what we can do together.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess another dimension, of course, there's research and practice, but for me, I've kind of lived in both worlds of career and mental health. So I think another dimension of my work is integrating career development and mental health. And so, and I think that has implications for people who work in both worlds, people who focus their work on career, people who focus their work on mental health, because there is an abundance of research that indicates that there is a connection between those worlds. And again, with this thought of research-informed practice, well, now that we know that there's a connection, what are the implications for practice? Like, how are people who focus their efforts on career responding to mental health elements to the degree that they're able? How are people in mental health environments responding to this element of career? Like, and because there's a lot of information that indicates that these things are integrated and we can't separate them. But often how we talk about them as if they are separate. But that does not reflect the reality of people's lives. And so I think we need to respond to that.
Well, you definitely are following through on the term that you chose and continue to build on it. And I totally appreciate this discussion.
Yes, I think it's important. And when I'm talking with people, like I think anecdotally, a lot of people have that understanding. I mean, if I think about how I got to where I am, and I talk with other people about where they are in their career development, when you start to talk about, oh, what are the factors that helped you get here? What are the things that made it difficult? There's a lot of different elements to it that are mental health related, that are familial related, and so in addition to anecdotally, there's an understanding. Again, there's a lot of evidence to support that there's this connection, and so with that in mind, again, as I've said, how do we respond to that? How do we respond? How do we shape our work with that in mind?
A very big question that
Sure.
I hope we continue to collaborate and try to solve that question, or at least make it move forward for sure. The next question takes me to your personal life, Dr. Seth. I'd like the audience to get to know you, who you are. Do you mind sharing with us your personal story? If you can share the whole thing or one story that you think would resonate with the audience, and with it a message that you would like to share by being here on this program.
Sure. Yeah. I definitely think a lot of my motivation for focusing on the things that I focus on is my own lived experience. And so I certainly had a long and winding road of trying to find what it is that I want to do. And and in those difficulties, I came to realize the importance of support and how I've been fortunate to have people who have supported me along the way. So I was not someone who knew what I wanted to do right out of the gate. I took a long time to finish my undergraduate studies. Went out and worked in various jobs, did some construction, landscaping, those kinds of things, and then I came to realize what it is that I wanted to do, but I also realized that I wanted to help other people who are like me. And so I've found a benefit in people who are counselors and who are in this world of support. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to help other people like people helped me. And so that's what got me here. And so when I was in my doctoral program, I was in Virginia. I was at the University of Virginia. And in the United States, the time I was there, the economy was really struggling. And they called it the Great Recession. And it was like 2008 to 2012. The housing market collapsed. A lot of people were really struggling. And I was in a training clinic that worked with people in the community in addition to people at the university. And I started seeing people from the community coming in who were struggling to find jobs and the mental health impact that had on them. And I was really starting to get interested in this about how, wow, you're struggling to find work, and this is really causing tension in your relationships and causing you to have mental health challenges. And so I really started becoming quite fascinated about this connection. And so then I went to Florida State University, where I worked in the University Career Center there, who also saw community members. And my primary role was a practitioner, and I oversaw the direct services that were provided. And again, continue to see how this connection manifested. And so it's a little bit of how I came to really focus my energy on this particular topic, and really wanting to continue to develop ideas, collaborate with others to try and help those in need.
If I was to ask you for a message from this experience, what message would you pass on to the audience?
I guess for me, not all who wandered are lost. And so that was kind of like there's a line from Lord of the Rings books, and that's kind of along those lines. I don't know if that's an exact quote, but not all who wander are lost. And so, for me, and I also appreciated the fact that people just continued to try and be there for me, even when I gave them reason to maybe say, okay, I think that's about it for this one. And so for me, again, I took a long journey, did a lot of various things, but all of it was informative. And I really think has helped me in my work because I think I can really empathize with people who don't have a clear path because I didn't have one myself. And so, kind of this idea that it may take some time and there's always something to learn from an experience, even if the experience isn't what you anticipated anticipated it being. There's always something to learn there. And as counselors, how do we like spotlight the opportunity to learn something, no matter what occurs, even if it's not something that I wanted to have happen? So, anyways, that's a long-winded response, but again, it just comes back to this place that each person has their journey, and sometimes we just gotta kind of be with the journey and see where it takes us and reach out for help when needed.
That's a wonderful message, and I thank you for taking this on. As I hear your journey, and at the beginning, you also talked about the connection between career and mental health.
Mhm.
Can you explain to the audience how, in your opinion, these two are connected?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're connected in a lot of different ways. We have experiences within the world of work and career that can impact aspects of mental health. And so, just thinking about a couple of quick examples, one that comes to mind is this thought of I'm trying to decide what it is that I want to do. And that kind of decision can have a fair amount of weight to it. It feels like a pretty big deal. And how people respond to that could be they become anxious. It could be they become confused. It could be that they lack self-efficacy. They could start to develop beliefs about themselves that are not productive because they're having to make this decision and they don't know what to do. And so, again, that's one way in which I think those things are related. But if we also think about in the realm of mental health, if people are experiencing things such as high levels of anxiety, depression, those kinds of things, it can certainly impact one's ability to effectively engage in career and work. So, an example there might be if I'm a person who's focused on career, something that's commonly utilized is an interest inventory. Like, here's an interest inventory. Let's respond to let's think about what you're interested in and let's see what occupational options would align with that. But then you have someone who is struggling with depression, and one of the symptoms of depression is diminished interest. And so those two things can make it very difficult to align with that. And so you might be wondering, how do I help this person who's struggling with that? And so those are some examples that come to mind. I mean, there's research that depression is related to dimensions of career, like negative career thinking. We just ran some analysis on some data around anxiety and how it's related to negative career thoughts and information processing. And there's really some pretty compelling results that indicates that they are related. And we're actually working to publish that paper. And so again, there's a lot of different ways in which it's related. I try to think about it comprehensively. I don't just think about career concerns and mental health concerns. I really think about those things as related to each other.
Congratulations on the research. I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, we're working on getting it published, so we'll see. Might be a process, but it was a study that we've been working on for quite a while. One other example, though, is that career interventions can have mental health benefits. Like, that's another thing I'm really fascinated about is the impact of a career intervention on people's mental health. And so we actually looked at a brief career intervention. And this is something that was actually published. And it was a 30-minute engagement with a practitioner in a career center. And we looked at the impact on that engagement on anxiety, confidence, and knowledge. And we actually found that career intervention had positive impacts. It lessened anxiety, It seemed to increase confidence and increase knowledge for the most part. And so that was like, to me, it's this whole thought of the impact of career support on elements of mental health is something that's also interesting to consider.
Thank you for sharing the fabulous examples because it really puts things for us to see clearer on how things are connected. I'm going to move next to another research interest of yours, and it has to do with the cognitive information processing theory.
Yes.
I realize this question is a big ask. What can you tell us about the cognitive information processing theory, or CIP, for those of us who work with students and have not really encountered this theory? Does it fit? How does it work?
Yeah, I would say it does. I would say it does. And so I came in contact with cognitive information processing theory in my work at Florida State University. And so there's a big focus on that approach. The thought of the theory is that we're trying to help people with career decision making and problem solving and trying to navigate those things. And within that process, there's a couple of things that are important to consider, which is that within that, there are certain things that people will benefit from having, which is there's some knowledge around themselves, around occupations. There's also knowledge of navigating a career decision. And then there's also an importance of paying attention to people's self-talk, their self-awareness, those kinds of things. So there's knowledge elements of it, but then there's also process elements of it. So when we think about those knowledge elements, we also need to think about how do we put those things together when someone encounters a concern. And so as a practitioner, I'm thinking about those things simultaneously. And it's a learning engagement. So from a CIP perspective, and CIP is cognitive information processing theory, it's a learning engagement. The practitioner and the person who is receiving support are working together to develop an enhanced understanding of how it is we're navigating this concern, which then hopefully can be generalized to other concerns going forward. And it's very much designed to be easily recalled. So there's a pyramid, which is the knowledge domains, is called the pyramid of information processing. And there's a practitioner version, but there's also a client version. Then there's the Kasavi cycle, which is communication, analysis, synthesis, valuing, and execution. And there's a practitioner version, but then there's also a client version. And so with that, again, it's a learning engagement. So I'm sharing the theory with the client. Like, this is not something I just kind of keep to myself. This is something that I'm going to tell them about and explain it to them. Because again, the hope is that they're then learning something that will benefit them in the next concern that they encounter, because it's going to happen. And so, and it's also designed to enhance their sense of agency around being able to navigate these concerns. Because now that they have a way in which to deal with whatever this particular concern is, hopefully they have an increased sense of their capability of being able to deal with it in the future. One other dimension that I think is important to mention is that not all interventions are the same. Like, we need to provide the level of support based on the level of need. So there are certain concerns which are going to require a fair amount of support. There might be a lot of mental health things that are coming in that are challenging. There might be a lot of elements that make it difficult for people to effectively navigate this concern. So I'm going to need to provide a fair amount of support in those kinds of instances. But there are other times where people just need a lesser degree of support. And so as one of the things that I've heard some of my colleagues talk about who focus on CIP is that there's an element of equity to this, that there's a much more significant need out there than there is our capacity to fill it. And so we need to adjust the amount of support we provide to ensure that we can support as many people as possible with their concern. And so there's the knowledge, there's the process, there's a learning engagement that occurs designed to help people have an enhanced awareness of how they can navigate whatever concern there is, which then they can put in place going forward.
This is perfect, and it is an introduction to get people to think about the theory and see if they would like to learn more. If they would like to learn more, is there a practitioner's article that's published?
Yeah, we recently had a revision of the text, Cognitive Information Processing, Career Theory, Research, and Practice, which we have made open access that anyone can access. It's not something you have to buy. And so if you look that up, Cognitive Information Processing, Career Theory, Practice, and Research, it's published through Florida State University Open Publishing. I would also encourage you to go to the Florida State University Career Center website. And we have a lot of resources for people, including handouts, including presentations on the approach. So our philosophy really is to give it away. We really want people to have the information which then they can use to benefit those they serve. So we don't see it as proprietary. We see it as we're committed to providing this information to people in an accessible manner. Because again, we hope that people are receiving what they need to benefit those in need.
That's perfect. I'll be sure to put the links in the episode notes. I've got one more question for you, Dr. Seth. Do you have an example that you can share with us, something that you'd like to do now or in the near future where you're stepping out of comfort zone?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess for me, my international work is an area where it's really invigorating. I'm really enjoying collaborating with people in various locations apart from the United States. Like I did some work in Lebanon. I guess it was August of 2023. I've been fortunate to work with people in other locations as well across the globe. And it really requires me to have an awareness of the conditions around career and mental health in those places. Because I think sometimes being in the United States, the lens can be focused on the concerns here. And one of the things I really am interested in is how career really is a global consideration. Work is almost a universal experience that we have as people, but it manifests differently in different places. And so there's different thoughts, there's different ideas, different ways and pathways that people engage in career. And so it's challenged me to have awareness of that. To when I go into those places, I don't talk about it as if I'm speaking with an audience here in the United States. I adapt the information to where it's understandable and applicable to those in these various locations. And so I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I'm very grateful for those chances to engage with people and to learn more about what that looks like in other places. But again, it has required me to learn more and adapt the information that I have to be the most benefit to them.
That's a wonderful example. Learning about other cultures and being aware of them is stepping out of your comfort zone. These were all the questions I had prepared for you, Dr. Seth. Was there anything else that you would like to talk about that I didn't ask you about before we wrap up the episode?
I appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation and to do it in this way that people can absorb it in a consumable manner. And I think this conversation is something that I hope we continue to engage in here. We continue to engage in other places, because I think ultimately that's how we're going to address some of the concerns that we've talked about today, is through continued consistent engagement between academics, between practitioners, policymakers, all these different voices that are part of the conversation. I think ongoing engagement is going to be a way for us to get to a better reality around these things.
I am clinging to these thoughts and I look forward to collaborations. And thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Time to wrap another episode of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. Our guest today on Hoda's Career Info was Dr. Seth Hayden. You can connect with Dr. Seth on LinkedIn. In this episode, Dr. Seth reminded us that each person has their journey, and sometimes we gotta be with the journey and see where it takes us and reach out for help when needed. And my questions to you today, are you with your journey? Do you reach out for help when you need it? comment, and share your experiences and thoughts. Remember that you can watch Hoda's Career Info on YouTube or listen to the episode on your favorite podcast app. To let me know if you're interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, ratecareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Please like, subscribe, share, and follow me, Hoda Kilani, on social media. Together, let's increase career info. I am your host, Hoda. Until next time, take the time to pause, reflect, and celebrate what you have achieved.